One of the things that modern universities do dreadfully now is convince their students that value structures are relative, and that's a big mistake. There's a lot of things wrong with that idea, and one of the things that's wrong with that idea is that doesn't include what I just mentioned, which is that's a good moral rule, is you are the thing that is and you're the thing that becomes, and you should put the thing that becomes at a higher place than the thing that is. That means you also have to allow yourself to shake off those things about you that you might be pathologically attached to, habits and people for that matter, ways of thinking, all of those things. You have to allow yourself to shake those off, and that's more like a burning. That's why the phoenix is the symbol that it is, right? It's old and it deteriorates, it bursts into flame, and then it's reborn. It's like, well, do you want to be reborn? It's like, well, that's not the question. The question is, do you want to burst into flame? And the answer to that generally is no, but that's the wrong answer. The right answer is you let all that nonsense burn away. And you might say, well, I don't know what I should leave behind, and the answer to that is that's a lie. You know some of the things that you should leave behind. All you have to do is ask yourself. You'll come up with a list instantly of 100 stupid things that you're doing that you know you could stop doing. Some of them maybe you don't know you could stop doing. It's like, well, fine, leave those alone for now. But there's a bunch of things you perfectly know well that you could stop doing that would improve your life. And so do that, see what happens. That's a good idea. All right. So it's personality and its transformations, because partly I wanted to talk to you about what you are as a human being and also as an individual, but also what you could become. And that's actually a crucial question in the domains of clinical psychology in particular, because a lot of what you're doing with people as a clinician is trying to figure out who they could become. That's right. You have a problem, your life isn't what it could be. It's like, fine, let's see what it could be like if we changed it. We'll figure out how to change it. That's got to be a negotiated dialogue, right? Because like, I don't know what the hell you should do with your life. I can help you figure it out, maybe we can talk about it, but you are the person who has to decide if the things that you're aiming for, get you out of bed in the morning, because that's at least one of the crucial issues. So you got to specify the goal, and then you got to specify the transformation processes and start practicing them. And you have to understand that you're going to be bad at it, but it doesn't matter, because bad's fine. Persistent is what you need to be. If you persist with tiny improvements, if you persist, you win. So okay, so in a broader context, you can think about this as a more fundamental ontological question. So one question is how you should act in the world. The other question is, well, what is the world? And that's a complicated problem. This is a scientific answer to that question, and that is that the world is a collection of objective phenomena, and that's a very powerful perspective. And we have a good method for determining what the world is like as a collection of objective phenomena. And that's made us very technologically powerful, and so more power to us and all that, but leaves a question unanswered. And the question is, well, the world isn't just a place of objective phenomena, because it's not a panoply of inert matter. It has living conscious creatures in it, and they're a different order of being. And the fundamental issue for conscious active creatures is not what is the world from an objective perspective, but how it is that you should conduct yourself in the world. And there's a kind of unbridgeable gap between those two domains of inquiry. And I think the reason for that is that the scientific method removes value from its descriptions. That's actually what it does. And so once you're left with value-free descriptions, it's very difficult to extract out a value proposition from them, because that's the scientific method removes the value propositions. You're supposed to be left with only that which is objective, right? And value propositions are in the domain of the subjective. So I think the idea that you can derive what you should be or do from a collection of facts is flawed, A, because the collecting the facts themselves gets rid of the value structure, but B, there's an infinite number of facts, and so how are you going to pick which ones should guide you? You can't. You have to do something else. The facts do not tell you what to do with the facts. You need something else to help you figure that out. Well, it's come to me over the years that that's what the narrative cognitive framework does. It's the framework that we use to specify how we should act in the world. And so you could divide the world into the world as it is and the world as perhaps it should be. That gives you some direction, and you need that, and we know this technically, right? You need direction. The reason for that is it's direction that produces primary positive emotion. And so if you need positive emotion to move through life, which you do, because you can't even move without positive emotion, and also positive emotion is a good bulwark against terror and pain. If you need those things, then you need direction, you need a goal, you need a value structure. So that doesn't seem particularly disputable to me. You could still say, well, what value structure? It's like, okay, fine, that's a good question. But I've thought a lot about that too. So if we're going to adopt a value structure, there's a couple of rules that go along with it. And this is why the bloody postmodernists are wrong, as far as I can tell, is A, it can't just be my value structure, because I'm stuck with you. And we're both stuck with all these other people. And so if I'm going to lay out a value structure, which is a way of interpreting the world, let's say, and there's an infinite number of potential ways of interpreting the world, it's like, yeah, fine, no problem, except that I have to interpret the world in a way that I can use while I'm dealing with you, and while the two of us are dealing with everyone else, and while all of you are dealing with everyone else. And so that's the Piagetian game proposition. If you want to be a popular kid on the playground, you better play games that other people want to play. That's a brilliant observation. And I told you that Piaget was trying to heal the rift between science and religion, and that's one of the things that he did that he thought helped do that. The question is, well, where do moral judgments come from? Well, they emerge as a consequence of consensus, and it's a bounded domain. If we're going to occupy the same space for any length of time, and those are two critical propositions, the same space and a long time, then we have to figure out how to play an iterative game that doesn't spiral downward, hopefully that might even improve, that we both don't object to. You know, sometimes maybe the person's depressed but potentially high functioning. They got all the damn micro routines. They're well socialized. They're just dormant. You got to get them awake again and implementing them. But sometimes you get someone in your practice, say, who's just been neglected like you cannot believe, right? The parents never paid any attention to them, or maybe just punished them every time they did something good. That's really fun. And then, you know, they didn't make friends, and so they're really vague and poorly articulated. And so then what you do is you work at the bottom of the micro routines and get them to practice building up all these little attributes that they didn't build up. And you know, one of the things you can think about in terms of character development is, so now maybe you understand something about your own personality. You might say, well, what could you do to improve your personality? And the answer is, develop some of the micro routines on the other side of the personality distribution. So if you're disagreeable as hell, maybe you could start learning how to do nice things for people. And that actually works, by the way. So if you take disagreeable people who are depressed and you get them doing nice things for other people, their depression tends to lift. But then by the same token, if you're agreeable, then you should practice doing some things for yourself and being more tough-minded in your negotiations. And so you can sort of place yourself on the personality trait distribution. You know, you're extroverted. It's like, okay, man, learn to spend some time with yourself, right? You're low in openness. Well, try reading a book that's outside of your sphere of interest now and then. If you're conscientious, well, you should probably learn how to relax occasionally, and so forth. So you can, I think partly what you're doing as you're developing your personality is not moving the mean much, the average, where you're located, but you're extending the standard deviation so that you're a bigger bag of tricks than you were before. And I think you can practice that consciously. It's like, you're hyper orderly. It's, well, get a dog, you know. Dogs are messy, horrible things.